It's not about how big the program is, but how fast you started releasing value to the clients. How fast can you get things done?
I'm Alex Khan, I'm Global Head of Content at Publicis Sapient, and today I am joined by Tilak Doddapaneni, who is our Global Head of Engineering. Tilak, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. How are you doing, Alex?
Doing pretty well. So what time is it for you there?
I'm in Bangalore. It's 7:30 p.m.
So tell me, what is the top line for what your job entails?
My job is to make sure the teams, have everything they need, including the talent. My job is not just to manage them or run them, right? My job is really say, hey, how do our teams at Sapient, our engineering at Sapient, are really 10x doing 10x worth of work.
What energizes you about that job? What do you find exciting about it?
I mean, see, a lot of it comes from me, being a deep engineer for almost like 15, 20 years in my career, and understanding, what were the things that, like looking at different managers, different leaders, what they did, and at the ground level, how it actually helped me or didn't help me, to be really productive. What were, great things I learned, what are the great, like mistakes, I not just me, but, things around me caused me not to be productive, right?
It sounds like you've almost learned as much from things that have gone wrong as things that have gone right.
Exactly.
That's a very engineer's way to look at things. I mean, whether you're an engineer or not, one thing that I find interesting is that going from doer to manager is one of the hardest transitions that someone can make.
Yes.
Never mind managing, but then also leading. You lead the engineering function at Publicis Sapient. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? Was that a challenging transition for you?
And actually, that's one of the reasons why I took a role at Sapient. I mean, I've been an engineering leader for, let's say, teams of like 500,000 people, right? It's not just your engineers, right? We work with, at Sapient, we work a lot with client engineering teams, right? And that is an entirely different ball game, right? It's a very heavy influencing role.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Why can't, I mean, you've worked at companies before, being a leader in their engineering departments. Why can't our clients build this function internally? Like, what's the advantage of working with a digital business transformation partner like Publicis Sapient?
So there are many, I mean, see, some clients, when they start thinking of this journey, I mean, I've had clients where, they didn't have their internal teams. Pretty much everything is, outsourced, right? And, as they're going on this journey, they say, oh, hey, we need a different type of partner, right? So you definitely have a set of clients like that. Then you have a set of clients who, have their own engineering teams who are usually, doing high level policies and, and guidelines, plus things that are needed mostly, baseline, right? But when you have, needs for large transformation and strategic programs that need a huge burst, right? They struggle, and they need help. So that's a second set of clients. Then there is a third set of clients who actually have the capability, right? Like they have the capability, they can do this. But the analogy I give, right, and why sometimes even I try to tell clients, hey, you need us, is think of like the booster rockets, right? We help you, escape the gravity, right? And at some point we
Right,
might peel off, right?
right,
But you
right,
need those boosters, right? And we are those boosters. That means the clients are also pushing you, right?
right.
They have a fairly sophisticated engineering teams. They're challenging you day in day out. You're actually, you get into client situations like that, you actually sometimes, you learn from the clients, right? And then, I mean, they've solved, basically everything that could be solved, and they're really asking you to solve something that couldn't be solved.
What I keep hearing more and more of is that India is not the place to find cheap talent. It's the place to find the best talent. Is that true? And has that evolved over time?
The engineering team is global, right? We have teams in North America, we have teams in London, we have teams in Romania, now we have teams in Latin, right? But 75% of our team is in India. That's the reason I decided to be out of India. It's not about cost, it's about scale of the talent. It's a little different. Sometimes, hey, I need something critical done, at a fast pace, and I need, let's say, suddenly 100, talented engineers, right? There's a good chance of getting that in India. So there is that scale aspect. The other aspect is definitely the sophistication, because in India you have not just companies like Sapient. You also have companies like, let's say, Goldman Sachs or Target, who have their development centers, right? And then you have huge Indian ecosystem of companies,
Hmm.
right? Indian companies, right? So you have who are very modern. You have like this talent pool that is highly sophisticated. And the reason, you could say, hey, what about other countries? They also have their own local companies. But you look at the scale. So let's say you look at the 5, 10 payment companies in India, right? They're dealing with like 100 million
Right.
transactions a day, right? So you tap into an engineer from there, right? It's a very different scale they have
Right.
dealt with.
Right.
The complexity of the problems, right? And the things they need to think to solve it, right?
Are there any trends there happening in India that you think are going to eventually spread to the rest of the world?
I mean, definitely the whole payment, right? The digital wallet, right? I mean, India and China are leading it, right? If you look at, right, Google Pay, and Amazon Pay, have been, ironed out and smoothed out in India. The second thing is, e-commerce, logistics and delivery, right? Ordering food, right? The scale. Third is ed tech, right? The strides that India is making in education, ed tech,
Mm.
is just incredible. The fourth one is, India is a budding ecosystem of sports leagues. The level of tech in those, right, and the way they're using the tech, because a lot of people don't have TVs, right? A lot of people don't have electricity, right? They just have a phone, right? So all the sophistication around gaming, gambling, right? Fantasy teams, right, is another area that's like really, I mean, some of the innovation I see is just incredible. And I'll just give a simple example, right? Even on my interactive TV, or on my phone, let's say if I'm watching one of these league games, you got like 20 choices in the bottom of the language, right? And when you click, it's actually a different set of commentators, different types of like, so let's say an ad, it's a time for an ad, you're actually seeing a different ad. And like dynamically on, if I'm on my phone or computer, right, I can just click on English, I can click Hindi, I can hit Telugu, right? So that is just, because there are like 20 languages, and in each one is like 60, 70 million people, right?
So engineers are often viewed, and often what their skill set is, hey, you're going to execute something, you're going to go build what I tell you. You've worked at lots of other places, you see what the culture is, and you've helped build the culture of Publicis Sapient, which seems to be very different in that engineers are in the room from the very beginning. But in
Yeah.
some of the companies that we're trying to transform, that might not be something that they're used to, is having engineers in the room from the very beginning.
No, 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 and that is a differentiator, right? And that is what the clients also see, right? When they talk to us, oh, okay, hey, right? So that's part of our methodology, right?
Mhm.
And because it's part of how we do things, I'm not worried, who's talking to the client, because the moment anything that we think could influence engineering, engineering leaders, are got into, into the room.
Right.
But definitely different for our competitors. So that's why it's a advantage for us. And it's definitely a new thing for some of our clients. I have enough examples of where, because the engineering leaders were in the room, they could guide the strategy and say, hey, you change this one requirement, we can get to customers in like 6 months early,
Mhm.
right? How important is that, little one requirement, right? You take off
Right.
that one little requirement, right? And like the board, or the CEO can make a decision. Yeah, I need to get this in front of the clients to beat my competition. Because we are able to get our engineering leaders at the table, we are able to help better make this better decisions. The clients a difference, but at the same time, it is a pitch to our candidates too.
So at a tools level, at a certain point, every one of our clients and even our competitors have access to the same tools.
Yes.
So why is working with Publicis Sapient different than working with another? DBT partner.
We are saying, hey, everybody just go, crazy experimenting, right? This is open innovation, right? And then we're going to start harvesting what people are seeing, right? So that is, different than, a lot of what other companies are doing. Hey, we're going to have this think tank, think through, and we're going to say, hey, this is how we're going to use the tool. This is overhyped in the short term,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
everybody thinks it can do that and this, but you actually might be not thought through how it it really impacts
Right.
or how to really use it. And the only way it will come is, right, you just go for open innovation. Everybody tries to do use it in their day ways of working, etc., right? And then we're going to bubble all of that. And I've even said, look, I'm okay if two teams want to use it for the competing teams use it for the same purpose and see who's using it better. That's why, like, I think it's wrong to say, hey, we're going to have like a small think tank team and tell and say, oh, this is how we're going to use it. Okay, right? So it might look a little chaotic. It might look like we're not going with like a straight, but in certain things like this, right, it is better to have an open,
When a digital business transformation goes wrong, what are some of the reasons that it goes wrong?
I've seen it gone wrong is, you took too long to get to the customers, right? You put like, 2 year, 3 year roadmap, and, you went to the customers at the end of 2, 3 years. By then, the whole circumstances of your original thinking changed. The customers' needs
Right.
have changed. It's not about how big the program is, but how fast you started releasing value to the clients,
Right.
right? And yes, it sounds like it's a strategy thing. It sounds like what features you're prioritizing, but it's also an engineering thing, right? So how fast can you get things done?
Should engineers be scared of generative AI and what it's going to do to
No,
jobs?
no. I don't think they should be scared. I think they should think of it as something that is, giving them, think of them, like a pair programmer sitting next to you and, giving you, ideas. And it's up to you to decide whether that idea is a good idea. It's like,
Right.
maybe this, oh, why didn't I think of this? Or like, that's stupid. It's a very crude analogy, right? Like, I started writing code on black screen, right? And when the editors came, that just gave me, so much power. Instead of writing 30,
Right.
40 lines of code, I could get to 100 lines of code, in the same amount of time, right?
Right.
But, it's not just number of lines of code, right? Like the systems today are, more complex. There are a lot more abstractions that we are dealing with, right? So having, so for me, you know engineers who play with it, and then who like figure out how it can help them, are going to win.
Right.
It's not something to be scared about. It's something to be really, how do you use it as a tool, and how do you master the tool.
Someone who's in school right now who wants to be an engineer, what would you tell them is the single most important thing that they could focus on?
Two things. One, I think still the fundamentals of computer science, the math, the algorithms, right? How your operating systems work, right? What are good coding practices are still key. Nothing can trump that. But the second thing is, before they get to work, I would suggest them writing any application and taking it live, put it in a live. It could be an API generating something. It could be an app generating something, right? I would tell them to put it live and then see what happens, right? What all things you have to get through, because I want them to understand it's not just writing code. The aspect of testing it, deploying it, putting it someplace where others can use it. There are a lot of things that go behind that. Because if they just focus on writing code, right, you know they might not be a well-rounded engineer, and a lot of that writing code could be automated. I see that the term I use is full life cycle, right? So you need to understand how your code is going to work, how it is going to be tested, how it is going to be deployed, how it is going to be run.
Tilak Doddapaneni, thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the time. Bye.